Shadow dance. The rain pattered incessantly against the window panes of the old manor house as night fell over the town like a heavy, gloomy cloak. Laura sat on her bed and stared into the darkness. She couldn't sleep. She hadn't been able to rest for weeks, ever since that one night a month ago that had changed everything. It had started with an anonymous letter, a hint of perfume, old-fashioned handwriting, and an invitation to a masked ball that didn't officially exist. She had followed the instructions with curiosity, unaware that this evening would draw her into a world from which there was no easy way back. The memory was as vivid as the moment she had stepped into the ballroom. It was magnificent, a piece from another time, as if the mansion itself had forgotten that it was in the 21st century. The guests, in noble masks and flowing gowns, moved as if in a ghostly dance, and Laura felt as if she had lost the ground beneath her feet. But it wasn't the atmosphere that upset her so much. It was him. His name was Adrian, a man of strange, menacing beauty, dark hair that fell in tangled curls in his face, and eyes as deep and black as the night itself. As he approached her, Laura felt a cold shiver run down her spine, and yet she couldn't take her eyes off him. His smile was soft, almost apologetic, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. "You don't belong here," he had said as he stood in front of her. His voice was soft but firm, as if he was speaking a truth he had known for a long time. "Who are you?" she had only whispered. "Someone who wants to save you from yourself?" had been his reply. And then, before she could object, he had taken her hand and led her onto the dance floor. His grip was cool, almost icy, and Laura felt the pulsing life beneath her skin slow down. They danced, surrounded by strange figures that blurred in the darkness. Every step with him made her slide deeper into a lostness that frightened and beguiled her at the same time. Adrian moved light-footedly, as if gravity didn't matter to him, and the longer she danced with him, the more she felt the world around her lose its meaning. At some point, she had felt his closeness so much that it was as if his heartbeat was echoing in her body. It was there, in that moment, when he whispered something in her ear that she would never forget. "If you choose me, you'll never go back." Laura hadn't understood what he meant. What would she not return from? But before she could ask, he leaned forward and his lips grazed her neck, leaving a burn that caused both pain and pleasure inside her. Suddenly the world had changed. The shadows in the ballroom became darker, deeper, as if the night itself wanted to swallow her up. Adrian had disappeared, and she stood alone in the middle of the room, surrounded by cold, staring faces. No smiles, no eyes looking at her. Just blank masks staring back at her, while the rain poured down relentlessly on the world outside. She had never been the same since that evening. Adrian kept appearing in her dreams, luring her, pulling her into a world that was so much more beautiful, but also more dangerous than the one she lived in. She felt his closeness in every quiet minute, in every second of loneliness. And sometimes, in the darkest moments of the night, she thought she could feel his fingers on her skin, hear his voice in her head. Tonight was different. Tonight it wasn't her imagination. She knew it when she felt the cold in her room, even though the windows were closed. It was as if the darkness itself had crept into the room and was reaching for her. She could see it in the shadows on the walls, in the blurred outlines that moved as if they had a life of their own. Then she heard him, his voice, soft and familiar. "Laura?" She turned around, and there he stood, as if woven out of the darkness. Adrian, the same dangerous gleam in his eyes, the same mysterious aura. He stepped closer, and with each step, she felt the air around her grow colder. "You called me," he said softly, and Laura felt her heart beat faster. She hadn't called him, not on purpose. But wasn't there this deep desire to see him again? This unconscious longing that she had carried inside her since that ball? "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice trembling. He smiled, a dark, bittersweet smile. "You already know, Laura. There's no escape now." He stepped even closer until he stood so close to her that she could feel his breath on her skin. His hand lifted and gently stroked her cheek. And in that moment, there was no more fear, just a strange calm, a peace she had long missed. "Let me show you everything," he whispered, and his voice was like a promise, a tantalizing promise of something so deep she barely understood it. "You belong to me." Laura closed her eyes. She felt the darkness surrounding her, felt Adrian's cold fingers wrapped around her heart like a net. And she knew he was right. There was no turning back. The night took her, and with it everything she had ever been.